Hilchos Ishus Perek Chamishi, the laws of marriage, chapter 5. Today it's quite a long chapter. The whole chapter pretty much centers around the concept of benefit. The idea that if a woman is going to become Mikudeshet, she's going to become consecrated to you through an object or through money which you give her, the money or the object has to be providing her with benefit, which means the money or the object has to have substance. And there are going to be many cases today we're going to discuss where either according to halacha or because of the circumstances, the object or the money which you're trying to transfer doesn't have any value, and therefore the kiddushin is disrupted. Okay? So we begin with foods that are forbidden by the Torah. Many times in the Torah we have what's called isurei achila, things that are forbidden to be eaten. But just because something is forbidden to be eaten doesn't mean it's forbidden to derive benefit from it. Let's say you could sell it. You just can't eat it, but you could sell it. There are other things that are called isurei hana'ah, prohibitions of benefit. In addition to not being allowed to eat certain foods, you also can't even derive benefit from it. Classic example that Rambam is going to give is chametz. Can you take chametz and try to consecrate a woman with chametz? So the Rambam says, halacha aleph, hamekadesh bedavar shehu asur bahana. If somebody consecrates a woman with an object which is forbidden to derive benefit from it, kigon chametz bepesach or basar bechalaf, like chametz on Pesach, on the screen you have a whole bowl of cookies and cupcakes and breads, or a mixture of meat and milk. Not only can you not cook meat and milk, not only can you not eat meat and milk together, but if you have a cheeseburger, you aren't allowed to derive benefit from it. You can't even sell it. Or anything like it.
Only in Eretz Israel?
All over the world. Anything like it from other isurei hana'ah, prohibitions of benefit, eina mikudeshes. So if you try to consecrate a woman with it, it does not work. Why? Because in the Torah law, anything which is asur b'hana'ah, anything which cannot have benefit from, is considered to be valueless. And because it has no value, therefore the woman isn't getting anything, and therefore she isn't mikudeshet. Here comes a fascinating law. Shavua tov. Good to see you. Even if the object was forbidden to derive benefit from only rabbinically, like chametz on the 6th hour of the day of the 14th. Remember on Sukkot, when we were studying the laws of the matzah, chametz and matzah, we saw that in addition, biblically, chametz is forbidden from midday on Erev Pesach. The sages went 1 hour back and said that already in the 6th hour of the day, you cannot have benefit from chametz. So what if during that hour, you take chametz and you try to consecrate a woman with that chametz? Says the Rambam, eino mikudeshes. A rabbinic isur hana'ah is also considered to be valueless, and when you consecrate a woman, it doesn't work. And there's an actual 3-way argument among the commentaries about this, because the Rambam gives an example. He doesn't just say if it's rabbinically forbidden to that benefit. He says rabbinically forbidden like chametz. Now the thing with chametz is that it's what's called in the first column there, it's a rabbinic decree sourced in the Torah. That means that the issue began in the Torah. Chametz on Pesach is forbidden on Erev Pesach. They just added something to it. There are other types of rabbinic decrees that are totally rabbinic. They didn't have it rooted in the Torah. They just came up with it. Hanukkah is coming up. Hanukkah is totally rabbinic. So something was forbidden on Hanukkah. Or there are types of chametz on Pesach that are totally forbidden rabbinically. They made it up that it's called chametz. What about that? So the Magid Mishnah says totally rabbinic things are exactly like rabbinic things sourced in the Torah. In both cases, it doesn't work. The Kesef Mishnah, which Rabbi Yossi Lipskier, author of the Shulchan Aruch, he says no. The Rambam's example sourced in the Torah is forbidden. But if it's totally rabbinic, you could actually be mekadesh a woman with it. Why? Because scripturally, biblically, it has value. Fascinatingly, in his own Shulchan Aruch, the Kesef Mishnah, who also authored the Shulchan Aruch, he rules differently. He rules like Rabbeinu Asher, the Rosh, who says that if it's rabbinic sourced in the Torah, it's actually a doubtful kiddushin. It's a question mark. And if it's totally rabbinic, it's totally allowed. But anyway, we're learning the Rambam, and the Rambam seems to imply, at least like the second opinion, if not even the first opinion, that rabbinic issues, rabbinic isurei hana'ah, are disturbing of the kiddushin, and it doesn't work. Halacha beis. Avar umachar, davar ha'asur bahana v'kiddush b'damav. What if you didn't do it with the chametz itself? You took the chametz, you sold the chametz for money, and now you're taking this money and trying to be mekadesh a woman with the money. Harezu mikudeshes. That works. That works. Because once the isur has been transferred to money, the money isn't considered like the isur, like the prohibition. Chutz mi'abedas kechavim u'mazalis, except for idol worship. We had in the first book of the Rambam, she'im kiddush b'dameha, that idol worship issues transfer to the money that you sold it for. She'im kiddush b'dameha eino mikudeshes. If you consecrated a woman with its money, she's not consecrated. Because the monetary currency converted from idol worship is forbidden to derive benefit from it just like it. The Rambam goes even further. If you have an animal or a calf that was dedicated to idol worship, and it makes manure or dung, and you take this dung, this fertilizer, and you want to give it to a woman to be mekadesh. So let's say she's a farmer, she loves fertilizer, so you're giving her fertilizer here, but it came from an idol worshipping animal. Eina mekudeshes. Doesn't work. It's not consecrated. Because everything related to any accessory of idol worship, it's forbidden to derive benefit from it. As it says, nothing from the destroyed property should stick in your hand. This is from the Ir Hanidachat, in the first book of the Rambam. Remember that city that was entirely persuaded to serve idols? You destroy the whole thing, nothing can remain. But what if you use the fertilizer of a Shor HaNiskal? Shor HaNiskal we're going to come across in the 10th book, the 11th book of the Rambam actually. If an ox kills a person, the ox needs to be killed. Now, what if between the time that you decided the case for execution and the actual execution, it goes to the bathroom? So now you have manure, dung that came out of a Shor HaNiskal. The Shor HaNiskal is forbidden to have benefit from it, but the dung is allowed. Harezu mikudeshes, she is consecrated. Afal pisha shor HaNiskal asur bahana, even if the ox itself that's going to be stoned, it's forbidden to have benefit from it. Pirshay einay asur bahana, its dung is not prohibited on benefit. She'einay davar chashuv legabe hashor, because the dung is not considered important relative to the ox. Halacha gimel hamekadesh bepeidesh shvius. What if you take fruit that grew during Shemitah? Fruit that grew during Shemitah is ownerless, hefker. But once you take it into your property, it becomes yours. So if you try to consecrate a woman with those fruit, it's going to work, as we'll see in a minute. Or with the ashes of the para aduma. 10th book of the Rambam, a long discussion about this. There was a red heifer, and they would take once every couple of years, every bunch of years, slaughter it, burn it, and mix it with a couple of branches, and the ash that was created from this would be mixed with water, and that could be used to purify people from ritual impurity of a corpse. Now, the process for making these ash waters was very complex. You had to get the ash, special water, mix it in a specific way, and typically, you aren't allowed to take payment for making this mixture. However, you are allowed to take payment for just moving it, transporting the ashes or the water. So therefore, the Rambam says, if you take the ashes of the para aduma and you want to consecrate a woman with it, or with the water that was filled up with the express purpose of being used or being turned into the sprinkling water of the para aduma, harezu mikudeshes. So since inherently the ash or the water has value, because you're allowed to take money for transporting it, so therefore, if you consecrate a woman with it, she's consecrated. And the same goes for the Shemitah fruit. Once you take it off the tree, it's yours and you can use it for consecrating a woman. Hamekadesh behekdesh shel bedek habayis. What if you use an object which was made holy for the temple? In hekdesh, in holy objects, there are two categories. Hekdesh lamizbeach, holy to be brought as a sacrifice, and hekdesh lebedek habayit, holy to be used for the upkeep of the temple. That's the lower level. So you're using an object. Somebody took a pot and they said, I'm making this holy for the temple use. And then you take this pot and consecrate a woman with it. Bishoygeg, if you did it unaware, you were unaware that it was holy. So it's like any time you use something holy that you're unaware of, it becomes yours, and you have to pay the temple treasury for it. So since it becomes yours, harezu mikudeshes, the woman that you consecrated with it is consecrated. You have to pay the restitution, the principal plus a fifth. We'll see more about this in the 8th book of the Rambam. You have to pay that to the temple treasury. The yavi ashamaya, and bring your sacrifice. Kedin kol mayel bishgaga, like anybody who misuses temple property inadvertently. The im kiddush by isha b'mezid, but if you consecrated a woman with temple property, purposely, you knew it would belong to the temple, eina mikudeshes, then funnily enough, she's not consecrated. Why? In the 8th book of the Rambam tells us that when you misuse temple property purposely, it doesn't become yours. When you use it inadvertently, it becomes yours, you pay the restitution. When you use it purposely, it doesn't even become yours, so you haven't given the woman anything. Dalid, kitcha b'maiser sheni, if you consecrate a woman with a second tithe. I love going back to the slide. When a farmer produces crop from his field, it's called tevel, untithed produce. Then you have to give a bunch of gifts, 2% to the Kohen, 10% to the Levi. Another 10% is called Maaser Sheni. The owner takes it to Jerusalem. It belongs to him, but he has to eat it in Jerusalem. So it has somewhat of a holiness. So the Rambam says if you take that Maaser Sheni and give it to a woman to consecrate her with it, Bein b'shegeg, bein b'mezid, eino mekudeshes. Whether inadvertently or purposely, she's not consecrated. Why? It's yours. Says the Rambam lefisha ein loy lasos bo sha'ar chafotzav ad sheyischalo. Because with the second tithe, you aren't allowed to use it for personal things until you transfer the holiness onto other money, as we'll see at length in the 7th book of the Rambam. Shenemar b'maiser, because about this maaser, about this tithe, it says la Hashem hu. It belongs to God. You're eating it, but it belongs to God, so you cannot use it for your own purposes.
Now, how about afterwards?
After you transfer the money, if you transfer the holiness to other money, then of course you can use the produce to consecrate a woman. Halacha hey, kohen shekidesh bechelkoi. Kohanim serving in the temple, besides for doing the temple service, they also had to eat from sacrificial meat. So what if the Kohen takes his steak home and he consecrates a woman with it? Whether from the highest level of holiness, lower levels, every morning before davening we say Kodshe Kodashim, Kodashim Kalim. There are different types of sacrifices. A chatat, for example, a sin offering which the Kohanim ate, was the highest level of holiness. A shlamim, a thanksgiving offering, was Kodashim Kalim, lower level holiness. Doesn't matter. Either way, if the Kohen takes his korban steak and tries to use it to consecrate a woman, eina mekudeshes, she is not consecrated. The Kohen only has the rights over this meat to eat it, not to do anything else with it. But if a Kohen uses the truma, someone gave him 2% of their fruit, and now it's his, and he uses that to consecrate a woman, or the 10th of the 10th. This 10% of you give it to the Levi has to give 10% to the Kohen. That's called Trumat Maaser. So he has the Trumat Maaser, and he is consecrating a woman with it, Bikurim, or with the first fruits. Whenever you have the Shivat HaMinim, the 7 types of fruit, you bring the first ones to the temple, it goes to the Kohen. And if a Levi got his 10% and uses it to consecrate a woman, the Yisrael shekidesh b'maiser ani, or if a Jew uses the 10th, that goes to the poor people. I said before that 10% goes to Jerusalem. That's only during 4 years of the Shemitah cycle. 2 of the other years, you actually give it to the poor as tzedakah. So if a Jew takes the maaser ani and consecrates a woman with it, harezu mikudeshes. In all of these cases, the produce actually belongs to them, and so they can use it for any of their needs, including to get married. Halacha vav matanos shaloi hurmu harehin k'moshe hurmu. We're going to expound on this later in a later book of the Rambam. But when you have this produce over here, okay, and you didn't take yet all the gifts, the 2%, 10%, you didn't take it. According to halacha, though, it's as if they're separated. Somewhere in this pile, you can point to the 2% and see that it's truma, or that it's maaser, 10%. So therefore, a very interesting case emerges. Lefichach, the following halacha applies. Yisrael shenaflu leitvalim mi beis avi imay kohen. If a Jew, a regular Jew, had a grandfather who was a Kohen, this happens all the time. A guy is a Kohen, his daughter gets married to a regular Jew, and the grandson is not a Kohen anymore. Okay? The Kohen passes away, and let's say he's the next immediate relative. His mother passed away, so it'll go straight down to him. Now, by the time that his grandfather died, his grandfather was also a farmer, and he had some of this produce that he still hadn't taken Truma v'Maaser. In the 7th book, the Rambam tells us a Kohen also has to take stuff of his own produce. He must separate Truma and Maaser. So now, the Kohen has this pile of produce. He dies before having a chance to take away the tithes. And his grandson, who's the Yisrael, a regular Jew, has to take Truma v'Maaser. V'hifrish mimenu Truma u'Maisros, he separates the proper 2%, 10%. Harehein ki Trumais u'Maisros, shenoflu lei b'Yerusha me'avi imay. It's as if when he inherited it from his grandfather, he already inherited the ready-to-go separated Truma v'Maaser, because his grandfather could have taken it and given it to himself. V'in kidesh b'han isha, and therefore, if you consecrate a woman with it, harezu mikudeshes, she is consecrated, because the Truma that belongs to a Kohen is allowed to be used. And if the Kohen dies and passes that on as an inheritance to his grandson, he can also use it. Even though he can't eat it, he's not a Kohen, but he can sell them off to another Kohen, since he has the rights of sale. So when it's in his property, it's also considered to be proper possessions, proper money, and he can use it to consecrate a woman. But if a Jew goes ahead, separates Truma from his own crop, and wants to use that before he gives it to a Kohen, wants to use it to consecrate a woman, Eina mikudeshes, that doesn't work. She's not consecrated. Shari eina lemachra. When you separate truma from your own crop, you don't have the right to sell it. All you have the right to is to choose which kohen you give it to. So if we have David the kohen and Yizhar the kohen, and I don't like one of them, I can give it to whoever I want. I only have what's called tovat hana'ah. Tovat hana'ah means the prerogative, the option to give it to whoever I want. Because he gives it to whoever kohen he wants. The right to distribute is not considered to be money. So when you have the truma in your possession, it isn't considered to be of value, and therefore you cannot use it to consecrate a woman unless you inherited it from your grandfather. Okay, yesterday somebody asked about this. You steal money from somebody, and you go and give it to a woman to consecrate her. All types of robbery. Gezel is outright robbery in broad daylight. Gneva is stealthily. You went in secret, robbed him. Chamas, like the Hamas. Chamas in Hebrew means when you force a guy to sell you something. Stick a $100 bill in his face, say, give me what you have now. So you're paying him technically, but you've robbed him of the object. And then you go and want to give it to another woman. It's actually going on right now. About last week, they found a guy who stole $8 million from COVID relief, and he bought himself a mansion in an island in Florida, on oil fields in Texas. You're using stolen money, and you're getting yourself a wife. So the Rambam says, even though we might be emotionally charged to think, how could you steal and then get a woman? But it depends. If the owners gave up, they despaired of ever getting their object back, and it's well known. Even the witnesses watching the Kiddushin know that the object was stolen, but it was despaired of. Then the woman is indeed consecrated. But if the owner never despaired, then it's not his, it's still the owner's, and so the woman is not consecrated. It has to be known. The Talmud says elsewhere that if you hear the owner saying, "Oy vey, I lost my object, I'm never getting it back," so then you know what he's thinking. Ches, hanichnas lebeis chaveiroi. You walk into your friend's house, and you just scoop off some food off the table or an object off the table, and you consecrate a woman with it. Uba baal habayis, and the owner comes and he seems to agree with you. Afal pisha amar lo, even if he says, "Lama le nasata la davar zeh." You walked into my house, you only took the nice bowl, the fruit bowl. Why didn't you take my silver challah knife and give her that? So he seems to agree, right? He says, you could have taken something better. His agreement doesn't actually mean agreement. She's not actually consecrated. He only said that so he shouldn't embarrass him in public, but really he meant, what the heck are you doing in my house? Get out of my house. Since he used his friend's money or property to consecrate a woman without his friend's consent, that's considered robbery, and she's not consecrated. What if you walk into your friend's house, take something that you know for sure he wouldn't care about? You're going a date, a walnut. Here there's a doubt. The commentaries say we're not sure if he agrees or not, even though typically he wouldn't agree, but we have to take into account maybe he would have a problem. And therefore it's only mikudeshet out of doubt. Halacha tes. If you have merchandise that's shared, you and your friend are making an investment with this merchandise. You go and you divide the property without telling your friend, and now you have your portion, and you consecrate a woman with your portion. Says the Rambam, since whenever partners want to divide, they need to go to court to get a proper evaluation. You can't just do it on your own. So the woman over here is not consecrated because your division is considered nothing. No partner has a right to take whatever he wants, leave whatever he wants. You got to go to court. So the fact that he divided his property is nothing. Yud, look at this guy. You rob a woman of something. You steal from her something. You force her to sell you something. And you go back to her, you say, hey lady, I just stole this from you, now become my wife. Okay. And he says to her, you are consecrated to me with this. If they were previously engaged. Now, I don't know why the engagement is not breaking off right here and now, but let's say they were previously engaged, and she takes the object quietly, that's kiddushin. She is mikudeshes.
What if
Because they were previously engaged.
What if he owes the lady $500?
Owes, we'll see in a second. If they were never engaged, even if she's quiet while he gives her the object as a kiddushin, of course, she's not consecrated. Why? Because she's just taking back what's rightfully hers, even if she's quiet. If she explicitly says yes, in agreement, then she is consecrated. Yud Aleph. Let's say you give her a watch, to watch for you. And he tells her, Kinsi pikaden zeh, here, please take this deposit. And then as you give it to her, you say, hey, I'm giving it to you. Become my wife with this. If you say those words before she actually takes the watch, and she took the watch and she was quiet, she is indeed consecrated. But if after she had already taken it as a deposit, then he says, you are consecrated with it, and she's quiet, that's not considered to be anything. Here's a big rule, going to come up again and again. A woman's silence after she receives money or an object is not considered to be an agreement. Only an explicit yes. If she explicitly says yes, I'm taking it as kiddushin, then it is consecrated. Okay, now the case of Shlomo just asked before, a debt. We're starting with now a debt that the man owes the woman. Okay, the man had borrowed $100 from the woman, and he returns the $100. The Amar La, and as he's returning it, he says, Harei at mikudeshes bay. I know I owe you this money anyways, but I want you to become my wife with this. Kaidem shatit lanu. He says those words before she takes the money. V'natalte v'shaska. She takes the money and she's quiet. Is her silence an agreement or not? If they were already engaged, she is consecrated. But if they were not engaged, she is not consecrated unless she says yes. Why? Because giving back a woman her money that you owe her is just her money. It's not giving her anything new. But if he said it after she took back the money, even if she says yes, it doesn't work. You didn't give her anything. She's taking what's rightfully hers. The moment she takes the payment is complete. She can no longer ask him the money again because he already returned the money. So he hasn't given her anything new. So therefore, even if she says yes, it doesn't work. Now we go the opposite way. This halacha was the man owed the woman money. Now let's do the opposite. The woman owes the man money. Hamekadesh b'milva. A person wants to consecrate his wife with the loan. Afilu haisa bishtar, even if it was on a note, as in this comic. The man is holding the promissory note, he's holding the IOU, and he says, look, take it. You don't owe me any money. And now the fact that you don't owe me any money anymore should be a benefit, because now you have an extra $100, and become my wife through that. Says the Rambam, Eino Mikudashes, it doesn't work. Ketzad, what does that look like? What does it mean to consecrate with a loan? She owed him a dinar, a coin. The Amar La, he says to her, you know that coin that you're holding, that actually belongs to me, that you're supposed to pay me back? Keep it and become my wife. Eina Mikudashes, doesn't work. A very classic halachic rule. When you give a loan is meant to be spent. And therefore, once you gave her the $100 30 days ago, it's considered as if it's spent. For sure, if it's actually spent. There is no actual money here. Because she already spent that coin, and the pleasure derived from it already passed. And therefore, just by you relinquishing the loan, you don't give her any new pleasure. What if there was collateral involved? You gave her $100 and she had given you her car. And she said, you hold my car, and if I don't pay you back, you keep the car. So now, let's say the guy relinquishes the loan and he also gives back the collateral. Now she is consecrated. Because now that he gives her back the collateral, she's having a new benefit from the car. And thereby, she gets benefit, and therefore, With that benefit, she becomes mikudeshes, she becomes consecrated. Tesvav. Hamekadesh bahanoas milva. What if somebody consecrates a woman with the pleasure in a loan? The Rambam will shortly explain what this means. Harezu mikudeshes. Pleasure of a loan works. She is consecrated. Ketzah, what does that look like? He lends her 200 zuz, $200. The Amar La, and he says to her, listen, really the loan should only be for 30 days. But Hareat mikudeshes li bahanoas zman sha'arviach lecha b'milvazu. I'm going to give you pleasure of time. I'm going to extend the loan for 60 days. And by that fact that I extended the loan, you're having pleasure from that. Become consecrated to me through that pleasure. It's going to be in your hands for so many and so many days. And I will not ask it back from you until that time. That works, she's consecrated. Because she gets pleasure right now. She can now use the money for longer time than he originally intended. However, the Rambam says parenthetically, nothing to do with marriage. The Asr Lases came. It's actually forbidden to do that for a different reason. It's like interest. Whenever you get back more than what you gave, that's interest. Here you're giving a loan. Besides the fact she's going to pay you back the money, you're also getting her as a wife. So you're getting two things back for your $100. It's like ribit. It's not actual ribit. It's only rabbinic ribit, but it's forbidden to do it. And the Rambam, out of character, doesn't usually do this, but he says, you should know, Pirshu Rabboisai, Bahanoas Milva, my teachers, reference to the Rif, Rabbi Yitzchak Alfasi, explained this pleasure of a loan, Dvarim she'ein roi l'shaman, in ways that you shouldn't even listen to. It's a very wrong pshat. He says that the Hanaat Milva is that when the loan is up, not when you give her the money, you say, I'm extending the loan. You give her the money, then 30 days later when the loan is up, you say, now I'm extending it. That's how the Rif explains Hanaat Milva, and the Rambam says that actually does not work. Halacha Tez Zayin. Omar la hareat mikudeshes li bipruta zu ubechayiv sheyesh li atzleich. I want to make you my wife with this coin and with the debt that you owe me. So the debt on its own doesn't work. But now that you added a coin, harezu mikudeshes, that's fine, she's consecrated. V'cheim omar la b'milva sheyesh li atzleich ubipruta zu. I want to consecrate you with the loan and with the coin. In other words, no matter what order he said it in. First is the coin, then the loan then the coin. Harezu mikudeshes, it all works, it's consecrated. Why? Because you're giving an additional coin. Yud zayin hoya lo yichayiv biyad acherim. Okay, here we begin the triangles. If somebody else owed you money, the Amar La, and you said to the woman, Hareat mikudeshes li b'chayiv sheyesh li biyad zeh. I'm going to transfer the rights of the debt. Instead of me collecting it from this guy, now you're going to be able to collect it from that guy. B'maimat shlashtam, if they're all three present, harezu mikudeshes, that works. We're going to have in the 12th book of the Rambam about this. If you are in the presence of three people, you, the borrower, and another guy, and you transfer a debt while they're all watching, the transfer works. So over here too, you transfer to the woman, it works to get her married. Yudches, kitcha ba'pikaden sheyesh le biyada. If you already gave a woman a deposit, and you say, hey, you're holding my watch, I want you to become my wife with it. Or you lend her a shovel, okay? And you say, oh, my shovel's in your house, keep it, let it be your kiddushin. If the object was worth a pruta, the kayam birshusa, and it still exists in her property, harezum mikudeshes, she is indeed consecrated. Commentaries ask, I remember already said this, and you give a woman a watch, it works. So some want to explain over here that we're talking about a case where, so the example that I gave before would be wrong. It wasn't a watch or a shovel, but things which go down in value. And now, even if it went down in value, but there's still a pruta left, it still works. Yutes. Omar la. Oh, here we go. You tell a woman, listen, Hareat mikudeshes li b'schar sha'adaber alayach lashiltain. You are becoming my wife with the payment of the fact that I'm going to speak to the government on your behalf. I know there's a pending prosecution on you from the White House coming down. I have connections. I'll speak to them. I'll get the case off the books. You are going to become my wife. And you actually spoke to the government. And the government let her go because of it and didn't prosecute her. Doesn't matter. She's not considered to be consecrated. Unless he actually gives her a coin. Why not? The benefit he provides her by talking to the government is like a loan. And when you use a loan for kiddushin, it doesn't work. you know what, I know you need help in your field, I'll help you in your field, you become my wife. V'asa, even if you did the work, eina mikudeshes, she's not consecrated. Ela imkein nasan lapruta mishalei, unless he actually gives her a coin. Lefi, because a very important rule that's going to come up later in the 13th book of the Rambam. We're doing a lot of references today to later books. Lefi shacharis yizke b'hapoyel mitchila v'atzayf. How does a salary work? I don't know how it works in America, but in halacha, in Jewish law, every second that a worker works, you actually owe him money. The worker gets the salary every second from beginning to end. It's not a do the job, get the money. It's as you do the job, the money conceptually is going into your bank account. Every bit of work that you do, you get a bit of the payment. Which means that if your employer doesn't pay you yet, every second, essentially, you've given him a loan. Because every second that you work, he owes you money. Here too, when you work for the woman, every second that you're working for her, she begins to owe you money. It's a loan. And if you use a loan for kiddushin, it doesn't work. There are other opinions who say that schirut goes only lebasof, which means after you finish the job, then you get the money. In that case, it would work. But according to the Rambam, according to halacha, salary only goes second to second. It's like, how does it go in America? It's not like that, right?
No.
When you pay your worker, it's after the job.
The end of the day.
Yeah, end of the day. Okay, you only get your money's worth at the end of the day. Chaf Aleph. Follow the triangle, please. Ha'isha sha'amra. A woman tells a man, Tein dinar li pleini matana ve'eskadesh anilach. You, red guy, give money to the orange guy, and I will become your wife. Usually you have to give money to the woman, and she becomes your wife. Here she says, give it to that guy, and I'll become your wife. The nasan, and he gives the money. The amar la, and he tells her, Hareat mikudeshes li bahanas matana zu shenasati al picha. You're becoming my wife by the pleasure that you get, that I gave the present based on your instruction. Harezu mikudeshes, the woman is in fact consecrated. And the Talmud says this is because of the concept of a guarantor. Afal pishalei higia klum, even if you get nothing, the woman gets nothing. She gets pleasure from the fact that her will was fulfilled. And that guy gets pleasure because of her. Imagine this was not a marriage, this was a loan. Every guarantor says that. You give money to that guy, lend him $100, and I'll pay you if things go wrong. Just like a guarantor could commit himself, so can the woman. The underwriter. Next triangle, follow this. Red guy, you give a gift to the orange guy, and I'll become the orange guy's husband. So even though usually the husband has to give the money, here, since this guy gave the money, and she's getting pleasure, she's also married. He gave it to him. And that guy does the kiddushin, and he says, you are becoming my wife based on the pleasure of this present that I'm getting because of you. She is indeed consecrated. And here the Talmud says it's a combination of the concept of a guarantor and of an eved Knaani, a Canaanite servant. If somebody pays the owner of a Canaanite servant money, the servant goes free, even though he didn't pay anything for his own freedom. So here too, the guy didn't pay anything for his own kiddushin, yet he gets the wife. And that's the reason because of this, the concept of the eved Knaani. Chav Beis, the final triangle. Amar la heilach dinar zeh b'matana v'hiskad sheli pleini. The red guy says to the woman, here, you take the money and become the orange guy's husband. The kitcha yisay pleini, and the orange guy indeed says, kiddushin. The Amar la tells her, Hariat mikudeshes li bahana azu haba lich biglali. You are consecrated to me based on the pleasure that you're getting because of me. Harezu mikudeshes, she is indeed consecrated. Afal pisha linasan laha mekadesh klum, even if the orange guy never gave anything. Again, the same principle of the Evet Kanaani, the same way the servant earns his freedom without giving any money, he earns his wife without giving any money.
And she earns her non-freedom for the rest of her life.
And she earns her non-freedom. Amra Allah, if she tells him, Heilach dinar ze matana ve'eskadesh lecha. This is quite unusual. Usually the man gives the woman. She gives the man money, and she says, I want to give you a present. I really want you to take my present. I'll become your wife for taking the present. And he takes it. The Amar Allah, and he tells her, you are consecrated to me with the pleasure that you derive by giving me a gift. Im Adam Chashavu, if he's an important person, let's say he's a big rabbi. So it means something for the rabbi to accept your gift. So therefore, she's consecrated. Because she indeed gets pleasure by the fact that he gets pleasure from her. And with that pleasure, she consecrates herself to him. Chav Gimel ha'omer le'isha. A person tells a woman, listen, hiskacheli bedinar. I want you to become my wife with a coin. Thing is, I don't have the coin on me right now. So, here, take my watch till I give you the coin. It doesn't work. She's not consecrated to him. Because the coin that he promised didn't get to her hand yet. And the watch that you gave, you didn't give to become hers. So therefore, nothing is hers. Let's say somebody else owed you money, and they gave you a watch as collateral. You take the collateral and you consecrate a woman. You consecrate a woman with it. Even if the watch doesn't belong to you, the woman is consecrated. We're going to learn later in the Rambam. A creditor, when he gets a collateral, he does have somewhat of an ownership on it, and therefore he can use it to consecrate a woman. Halacha chav dalet. Ha'omer le'isha, you tell a woman, Hareat mikudeshes li bedinar zeh al menas shetachzirehu li. I'm a very stingy guy. I'm going to give you the coin, but give it back to me. Eina mikudeshes. Bein hechzira, bein lo hechzira. Neither way is she mikudeshes, whether she gives it back or not. Sheim lo hechziratu le'niskayim atnai. If she doesn't give it back, she didn't do the condition. If she did give it back, she has no pleasure. Nothing comes to her hand. Chavhei. Okay, we know this concept today called the money bouquet. You ever see this? You give somebody flowers, and you also put some cash inside. It's like an elegant way of giving a cash present. You put it into flowers. So the Rambam says, Nasan la aguda shal hadas. You give her a bundle of myrtle branches, or something like it. And you tell her, I want you to become mine with this bundle of branches. The kibla isai, and she takes it. Amrulai, then the witnesses come and tell him, the myrtle branches aren't worth anything, they're worth 5 cents. So he said, you know what, okay, let her become my wife with the 4 coins that are hidden inside the bundle. Im amrahain, if she says yes, then she's indeed consecrated. But if she's silent, the money inside the bouquet doesn't work. Because again, silence that comes after receiving the money isn't considered anything. She took it with the intent that it was a bunch of branches. Then when she reveals that there's money inside of it, she already got the money. So being silent isn't enough. Nevertheless, she remains mikudeshes in doubt because of the bundle. Remember yesterday we learned, even things that are less than 5 cents, maybe elsewhere they're worth 5 cents. So you have to always have a doubt, perhaps she's mikudeshet. Chavav. Now we're going to have 3 halachot about giving a woman a series of objects for kiddushin. Ha'omer le'isha, a man tells a woman, hiskachili bitmarazu, hiskachili bezu, hiskachili bezu. Here, become my wife with this date. Become my wife with this date. Become my wife with this one. Each date has a separate declaration. In yesh ba'achas me'an shave pruta, if either one of them is worth a pruta, harezum mikudeshes, she is indeed consecrated. V'im lav, and if not, einam mikudeshes ala misafek, she's only consecrated out of doubt. Shema tishva tmara achas pruta mamakim acher, maybe one date is worth a pruta. You can't go with all 3 combined. Why? Because he said each one on its own. Hiskachili bezu, hiskachili bezu. So you can only look at each one individually. Amar la, but if he tells her hiskachili bezu, ubezu, ubezu, this one and this one and this one, now it's a group. Im yesh bekulam shave pruta mikudeshes. If the totality of all 3 dates equals a shave pruta, a worth of a pruta 5 cents, she is mikudeshet. V'im lav einam mikudeshes ala misafek. But if not, she's only consecrated out of doubt. What if he's saying this one and this one and this one, but as he gives it to her, she's eating them? Im yesh ba'achrei shave pruta mikudeshes. Oh, then you only wash the last one. If the last one is worth a pruta, then good. V'im lav einam mikudeshes ala misafek, and if not, she's only consecrated out of doubt. Because the dates that she already ate are like a loan. They're non-existent. And if you use a loan for consecration, she is not mikudeshet. Which means that only the last date did the kiddushin, and therefore if the last date is worth a pruta, then it works, and if not, not. What if he gives her a bundle of dates? He says, here, become mine with these. If they're all worth a pruta together, good, consecrated. In this scenario, even if she does eat one by one, since to begin with he gave her the whole bundle, she's eating stuff that belongs to her, and therefore she is consecrated. Chavtes. In Talmudic times, water was worth the least, wine was worth more than water, and oil was worth more than wine. So the Rambam says, a person tells a woman, you are my wife with this cup. And she looks inside. Depends what's inside.
Water was
Cheap.
so valuable if you can buy a woman with.
Yeah. It was cheaper worthy, yeah. If it was full of water, since water is not so valuable, you can't only look at the water. He must have meant the cup and the water. So if the cup and the water together equal a pruta, she's mekudeshet. If it was full of wine, we only look at the cup, not the wine. That's what creates the value. But if it was full of oil, since oil is so valuable, and also you don't use oil at one time, use it over time, the assumption is he meant to give her the oil, not the cup. Therefore, if the oil itself didn't equal the value of a pruta, she's consecrated out of doubt, because maybe it's worth elsewhere shav pruta. But if the oil was worth a pruta, she is indeed fully consecrated, and we don't look at the value of the cup. That's not what matters. Only the value of the oil is what matters.